Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's Market Explain. This is a four-star, I call it a four-star media event. This is Brian Castle. I'm your host, and I've got two very interesting gentlemen that we're going to talk with today. Very often we do market commentaries, but then we also interview folks who are important players in the investing world. And we have a really special couple on here today from Proactive Realty. We've got Dr. Van Williams and Tony Lawrence, who are representing Proactive, and they're involved in housing that is disadvantaged housing. It's housing that is for folks at the lower economic spectrum, and so they're here to talk about that. So, welcome, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be here.
Having me. Well, good. So, this is an interesting story because we talk to a lot of investment sponsors who have a kind of a standard housing project or commercial real estate. It all sounds very nice. So this is very different stuff than what we've heard. And maybe Van, I'll put it out to you first. Tell us a little bit about Proactive and what you guys do for the people who live in the projects that you develop, and then for the investors who invest.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that introduction, Mr. Brian. The Proactive Realty Income Fund has been around since August of 2019, and we're primarily involved. Oh, and let me back up. My background is I have a doctorate degree in psychology. That comes into play as very helpful in the lower income social impact space, because we're able to meet people where they are. We understand them. We understand the dysfunction that often is present a lot of time with the lower income class. We understand programs such as Salvation Army, who places folks. Just recently, the city of Las Vegas placed 1, 2, 3, 4 families in our new manufactured homes that we placed in a park that we bought last year, cleaned up. It's tripled in value. Our first thing is people over profits. It just so happens that we're in a profitable space because we're doing the work of cleaning up communities, going into lower income areas, and taking assets, repositioning them, purposing them for income, making the renovations that we need to. So the Proactive Realty Income Fund is a value add fund. So we go after stabilized, semi-stabilized value add projects. I don't know if your viewers know this, but there's a shortage. Statistically, there's a shortage of over 8.3 million low-income housing units, period, just units, period, whether they be factory-built like manufactured housing, whether they be multifamily, or whether they be our other asset class, SRO, which stands for single-room occupancy. And quite often, it'll be a family of 2, maybe a child, maybe 2 kids who live in a large room. A lot of them have an en-suite bathroom. So think of a motel, like a Class C motel, that we're able to house these people. And so that's what we do. So we're immediate income. Investors come in. You asked about investors. So when investors come in within 90 days of investment, we provide a PRIF of 9% on our equity side. On our debt side, which is more short term, it can be from 1 year to 2 years. The second year is at the discretion of the fund. Small disclaimer there. That is a 17% return. And on that return, they're paid quarterly, and then the balance is paid. The kicker, we call it, is paid at the end. We're able to create a lot of social impact in that we go into certain areas that are just in need of renovation, need of workforce housing, and that sort of thing. 2 of my idols that influenced this fund were Sam Zell, the late Sam Zell, I should say, who I was able to meet and have a Zoom with, and he gave me a lot of encouragement. He says he doesn't do mentorship because he doesn't have the time, but he'd do encouragement meetings. So Tony was able to set that up with his assistant, Miss Sarah Berman, and we went from there. So
nice.
Yes, sir. So, and I started out personally as a fixer for a family office in the Bay Area. And so
Okay.
they had this large portfolio of properties, a lot of them low income. One of the principals of the family was a pastor, or he was or they call it, like in Church of God of Christ, they call it a superintendent. And he had
Okay.
these properties, and and he needed some help with getting them fixed.
Nice. So you had some experience. You met Sam Zell.
Oh, yes.
What else? What else did Sam Zell tell you? Anything? Anything you can share with our listeners?
Yes. So before meeting Sam Zell, I read one of his books. Am I being too subtle? I looked at some of his interviews on television. One of my
Nice.
favorites is Conversations with David Rubenstein. And so
Oh yeah.
founder of the Carlisle Group. So
Right.
I listened to that one, and he used the phrase grave dancer. And the phrase grave dancer means that a property is just dead. It's empty. And excuse me. And what he did was he breathed life back into it in the way of renovations, in the way of getting it back online and getting it rented back out. So we talked about that. And he says, well, now it's called fallen angels. He says, because these properties are more like fallen angels. And I says, okay, well, that's a different way of looking at it. And so
Okay.
we had a really great conversation. And I was very, very fortunate to have met him and spoken to him.
He did a lot of manufactured housing, and
He owed.
he was very, he became a billionaire with that, right? So that's part
He's
of what you do.
he's a god, and also just to add a little more color to it, Sam Zell is the godfather of the modern REIT, Real Estate
Mhm.
Investment Trust. He sold equity offers partners back in, I think, 2007, 2008, right before the crash, for $39.8 billion. He owned, to date, he owns the most manufactured home pads in the United States. Sam Zell does, the late Sam Zell, I should say. And I really like his approach. He says manufactured housing was the next best thing to sliced bread, to take a quote.
Nice. Excellent. Well, good. So then how do folks get involved with your projects? Like if they wanted to find a project that you've developed, how would they find them?
So they'd go to our website, they'd reach out
Mhm.
to myself or Tony.
Mhm.
So we have we're a fund model. However, recently, we've gotten to the other space of allowing people to do 1031 exchanges. And
Mhm.
what happens there is that we're tenants in common. They do a 1031 exchange. We identify a specific property, whatever amount they have, from as long as, so on the 1031 side, as long as they have a minimum of 400,000 up to 15 million, we can locate a property, get them invested, get it repositioned. And then I think it's 2 years later, I'm not sure of the exact term. I spoke with a gentleman about this. I think if they do a 721, or either the fund just buys the property from them, but we assist. So that's a new space that we're in that just came about.
Nice. So you have different spaces though. You have some essentially mobile home parks, you have some manufactured housing. What's the difference between them for our listeners?
So so when you think mobile home park, think of the 80s. Those types of mobile homes. They're older. They need some work. They just look older. Manufactured housing communities now are built to HUD code. They're low E, they're energy efficient. That really helps the resident on their utility bills, which allows them to stay in their homes, to be able to pay their space rent, or be able to pay uh, their monthly rents, and keep things affordable for everyone. So
Mhm.
manufactured housing is the newer, quote unquote, mobile home park.
Mhm.
Uh, and mobile homes are just the older ones, like think up until about 2003 or 2004, uh, before the really strict HUD standards came into being.
Right. Okay. So there's so So in manufactured housing, I had understood that a lot of the material is shipped to the site and it's kind of created there on site. Is that right? Is that how that works?
That's more of a modular project. So
Okay.
manufactured housing is built in a factory.
Mhm.
It is then placed on a truck. You have a 16 wide, which an average 16 wide can be anywhere from 600 to 1,400 square feet. You have a double wide, which can be 16, like 32 feet wide. Think of 16 and 16, 32 feet wide, or it can be as small as 20 or 28 wide
Mhm.
by 48.
Mhm.
And what happens is on a so each section is shipped separately. So a
Mhm.
truck could go to the factory and they pick it up. Like we bought homes from Champion, from Scott Built, from Legacy, from Clayton, and they would go to Clayton. They'd pick the house up. They prepare the house for shipping. They wrap it. They put wheels on it, strap down sides, and then they ship it to the location. Once it's on location, then a licensed installer installs it there on the space, on the
Okay.
pad that's designated.
Okay. So interesting. Good. So this is kind of the starter housing. What is the average cost of a unit that you would offer to an individual homeowner?
So if a person wants to buy a unit, we only mark it up 15%
Mhm.
as the max that we mark it up. Because we have a dealer's license, we're able to get the home in at wholesale costs, which saves on two fronts. If you're a renter, we're able to rent that same house out that would normally rent for 1,500-1,600. We're able to rent it out for right at 1,100, 1,125.
Mhm.
If we were to sell that same home, then we bring the house in for 60,000 setup. That includes the house, the freight, the setup. Once it gets there, it has two sets of stairs. It has to be anchored down properly, whether it's a wind zone 1, 2, or 3.
Mhm.
And so on a house that's 60,000, add 15% to that. So they'd be able to get into the house for under 70,000 with about 5% down.
Mhm.
In some cases, 10% down if they have like a 575 credit score. The finance company requires them to keep the house in the community until paid for. Once paid for, then they can buy land that's zoned and move it to that land, and now they have home ownership.
And
Okay.
Brian, a really
So
important follow-up point there is that our mission at Proactive, if I may, is to truly empower, right, those who are living in these affordable housing communities, and to do so as defined by the federal government. To live in, in an affordable housing environment, your income cannot, 30% of your income cannot, no more than 30% of your income can be used on your housing expenses, whether it's rent and utilities. So,
okay.
when Dr. Ben's talking about is these houses and other communities can be sold for quite a bit more, but really we're not trying to gouge. We're able to certainly reward investors for investing into these communities, but also allow families to rent and in some cases lease to own or wholly own their homes. And
Okay.
it really works, in sync with our mission of making sure that it truly is affordable housing.
Great. So what is the low end? You said 70. What is the low end of the most basic, smallest units you could purchase?
Oh, wow. Interesting question. We have 4 units coming into our Las Vegas park, and we're able to bring those in for 40,000 each. And
Okay.
those are 2-bedroom, 1 baths, 2024 models. They are in size 12 by 48. They'll be set there, and we'll be able to rent those out for $900 per month, which is
Mhm.
unheard of in Las Vegas. Because the
Yep.
average 1 bedroom in Las Vegas is $1,000, and that's probably an older Class C building. However, we're all able to offer these to lower income residents, and we also have a contract with the city. So the city, helps vet the people who come into our communities, and work from there. And we also have a huge pipeline of SRO properties that are in Las Vegas as well, right at 125 units that will house the transitional person that's been vetted, that's followed by a caseworker, social services. What we do like for our investors is that it creates a safety net. We're not allowed to use the word guaranteed for ourselves as a fund. However, for the people who need affordable housing, it's guaranteed by the government.
Great.
Yes,
So
sir.
they guarantee the loans actually as well?
No, so not the loans. They guarantee the amount of rent that we get. So typically,
Okay.
because it's more of a second chance housing in those situations, typically they give us double the deposit. So if for some unforeseen reason, we've exhausted every resource with the resident, or there a problem, or something happens, one of their guests or something, and that they have to be expelled from the property, then there's a cushion of at least 2 months to take care of. It takes about 30 days, but there's a cushion of 2 months to get the person relocated somewhere else to a different property.
Different project. Okay. So kind of the range in the affordable housing is the 40 to maybe 70. Do you have any units in these projects that would sell for more than, say, 70? Like, what would be the high end?
On the high end, that'd be a much larger park. Those may be one-offs. Like we have 5 acres in Pahrump, and we're able to put like a 22 or 2,300 square foot home there. And our cost would be right at 86,000. And so we just marked that up 15% to sell to the end user, with the agreement that, they're not an investor, or they're not trying to reflip the house, or, pull
Right.
one over on us.
Right. Okay. Okay. Very interesting. So up to upwards, just about over 100, just slightly over 100 is what it sounds like. Great.
Yes.
So, with the lack of housing units that are available in America in this space and others, so you're helping
Excuse
kind
me.
of free up, bless you, we're helping free up a lot of the backlog of need, right?
Oh, yes.
And do it in an affordable way. That's awesome. So, and then you're limiting your profits to 15%, but a lot of developers don't do that, right? Unless they're part of a project like this, they may charge a lot more if the market goes up, but you guys keep to that level.
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Bryant. It's because our mandate is social impact. So, quick story. I was in, and you may be able to relate to this because you're based in Chicago. I was in Harvey, Illinois. One of our properties is 2 of our properties actually. They're building apart 105 and 113, 154th Street. And I had a gentleman approach me. I was out, and usually when I'm out, I'm boots on the ground. I'm more of a regional manager, the managers that we have in place. Some projects I will stay and make sure that things get done appropriately the first couple of weeks, or if I need to come back or what have you, I will commute, no problem there. And the gentleman approached me and he says, man, I just got out of prison and I need some work. And I see you over here, with a dumpster and clean out the front. I says, yes. I says, yes, sir. I says, how you doing today? He says, I'm fine. I said, what is your name? So I forgot his name. So he gives me his name. I says, okay. My name is Canaan. I didn't say Dr. Williams or Mr. Williams. I says, my name is Canaan. I says, are you interested in working? He says, yes. I says, I have some day work possibly. I said, can you do just some labor? I need you to do some cleaning out of this apartment building. It was a 6-unit building. And I need you to help put these limbs, bushes in the trash, the trash container, dumpster, etc. He says, okay. I said, I'll try you out for a few hours. If you're still here and you want to work after a few hours, we have some cold water, because I usually buy a case of water and some ice, or either Gatorade for hydration, just depending on what's going on. And I says, okay. So he lasted for a few hours. What size boots do you wear in steel toe? He says, oh, I wear size, I think it was like 10.5 or 11. I said, you know what? I'll get you size 11. I'm going to get you a safety vest. And let me back up. I asked, did he have ID? He did have ID. It was from his incarceration. I took a picture of that, and I had him read a release of liability. And I made sure that, he was able to understand and read it. He signed it. And long story interesting, he worked for us for the first 3.5 days on that project. And then he's worked for us on and off for a couple years. When he's available, we'll call him. And if he has time, he'll work. But what was really interesting and what I really liked about the impact was that he says, you know what? He says, you know what, Canaan? Or he called me Mr. Canaan. He says, I was able to pay his Metro bill, because he had just gotten released from incarceration. He had not yet had his food stamp card to get a free phone. So he said, I was able to pay my Metro bill, which I think was $35, $40. My girlfriend and I live in this car. And then we were able to, get this hotel for a couple nights. Not a hotel, it's just like one of these corner places in Harvey that are like a motel, like $45, $50. He says, but it got us and our little baby off the street. And he really thanked me. And he says, I was thinking about doing the wrong thing. And he says, I appreciate the trust and the help, and they was able to buy something to eat. And what I'd like to say about that is that social impact goes well beyond housing. So when you involve people in the community, is everyone going to do right because you gave them a job or a hand up? No. However, statistics say that those who are prone to do crimes and things of that nature, that sometimes when they have opportunities like that one presented itself for him, over the few days, he made about almost $300. I'd say about $280, $290. Plus I bought lunch. There is a Popeye's chicken on the corner, and I went and bought a bucket, and sides and the plates for the workers before I went to the next project in Riverdale. And it just really makes a difference when people care, and when you can include people in the community, create some social impact. If they'll listen, give some advice, and some day work. And we also like to work with, there's a place in Illinois, it's right in Harvey, it's called CEDA, CEDA.
Mm-hmm.
They also have people who can work for the day, and we like to call shelters. And when we call shelters, one of the first questions I ask is, I says, hey, my name is Dr. Canaan Williams. My degree is in psychology. We are looking for a few day workers who are high functioning, who've been followed by a case manager, that sort of thing. And, that helps a lot with social impact, and it helps keep costs down.
So you're doing well as investors by doing good. And it sounds like you're doing a lot more good than just real estate, which is really great. It's really great.
Yes. Thank you.
Good. So tell me, you mentioned a little bit before about the investor equation. So there's some profit margin there, which is a good profit margin on a property.
Yes.
How do investors participate with you through these funds?
Okay. So on the one program that is 17%, it's a minimum 50,000 on that program. And there's quote unquote a lender to the fund. If they have less than 50,000, then the minimum is 10,000, and their return is 8%. It's paid quarterly. On the equity piece, we have a $30 million raise, 50,000 minimum for a credit investor, 9% pref, a true 9% pref that's paid after 90 days. So think simple interest. So on 100,000, that's 9,000. On $1 million, that's 90,000 divided by 4. And at the end, after we achieve a 15% IRR, there's a 60-40 split, 60 to the manager, 40 to the investor. By the way, Tony can tell you a little more about it. We have had, we've already had a return to capital on a property that we bought in Orangeburg, South Carolina. That we were able to return capital to investors, and they were very happy. And that was more like a 24% return.
Right. Great. So the returns have been good. Now, of course, we have to tell investors, none of these returns can be guaranteed. Of course,
no.
This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. That's only done through formal presentation of the PPM. But you can talk to your advisor, Four-Star Advisor, or others, and you could get involved in the proactive program if it's appropriate for you. Tony, you had also mentioned, some key elements of the fact that it was a workplace development and affordable housing, and that's kind of the focus, right?
That's right. Yeah. We specialize in that particular area, as Dr. Van has discussed. I think that anybody who's developing land would want something or someone like the proactive team to come in, because I look at what we do as really a tide that lifts all ships, right? When you improve an affordable housing community, all the surrounding areas are going to grow in value as well, right? And
Right.
so, just as Dr. Van mentioned, sure, it's great for the homes themselves, but really we are all about social impact, and we're actually in the process right now of truly identifying what our social impact is through getting a social impact report, because we know, we feel, we see what happens in the communities in which we invest, and our investors invest, but we want to show empirically that what we do is really improving crime statistics, education, right? When people have a stable place to live, all of a sudden doors open, right? You
Right.
basically, I like to think of us as hope carriers to a degree, right? We're carrying hope to communities, and that might sound cheesy to some listeners, but I know that you have a lot of listeners, Brian, who are all about impact investing. Money comes and goes. We're all investors. We know that, but to think that we can actually invest and have a lasting impact and say, hey, I helped with that project. I helped, to improve that manufactured home part, and whereby through the report, through the empirical data, we can show that it's just healthier. It creates healthier communities that basically can have a domino effect and impact more and more folks. I mean, Dr. Van is a great storyteller. And the reality is we have so many stories from the various parks in which we invest, and our investors work with as well, that would truly inspire people to know that, wow, you can, as you said earlier, we like to say that we do good and do well, that those two are non-mutually exclusive. And there's a lot of pride in that, because oftentimes it's simply about the capital, which obviously is a massive part of what we do. But to think that you can marry those elements and have a lasting, even generational impact on an area of the country or an area of a state, I'm sorry, that it really, I know it helps me sleep at night. And, we're finding more people jumping on board with this stuff, either through our debt deal or the equity deal. They both pay quarterly. They pay pretty quickly. And, again, I think that the message is resonating. People are jumping on board because they want to do more than just grow their capital. They want to grow their impact factor as a human being.
Absolutely. Well, and that's really, one of the fallacies. Many people say government only can do these things, but very often government has the wrong incentives, and the costs go up, and they're wasting all kinds of money. But you guys are providing a great product. You're also making money doing it, and you're creating a great service, giving people a great place to live, some dignity in a home, all the things that we really want. These are social impacts that we really want, and you can still make money doing it. And you have the right incentives, where government often doesn't have the right incentives.
Right. I think the proof's in the pudding for us. So the flagship deal, the flagship deal that Dr. Van cited a moment ago, that I think it's important for every investor listening to your show today should understand. So there was a parcel or actually a park that was purchased for about $1.26 million in Orangeburg, South Carolina. That was in 2019. And within 3 years, that park was sold for $5.2 million. Now, what's really important about this story is that it was sold to a publicly traded UMH, which has a stated mission of also empowering those who live in affordable housing. So that's a massive return. And that's where we come up with the numbers that historically we've paid actually over 25% IRR. But we're targeting a 15% on the safe side, because nothing is guaranteed. But I think historical numbers do matter. What we've done with the Hammond's property case study is basically use it as a template for everything else that we do. And I just want to really point the spotlight of credit at Dr. Van, because Anybody who wants to talk more about that, that's a whole podcast episode in and of itself, Brian, because
Yes.
Dr. Van went in and there were piles and piles of trash. He put on the steel toe boots, went in, ripped out houses that were condemned, worked with, local entities, permitting departments, everybody who's somebody in Orangeburg to take a park that was literally scheduled to be condemned within 2 weeks and turn it into a gold mine, and not just for investors, but also for the residents. That is a powerful story and serves as the template for what we do across all of our properties.
That's exciting. Well, great. This is, you're great storytellers, both of you. Van, you're particularly a great storyteller. And it's a great story to tell. It's a social impact story. It's also an investing story. So investors can turn their capital and make money, and you can sleep at night, as you say, Tony, because you're feeling good about what you've done. I guess all developers feel good about what they've done, but when you know you're helping people at an economic strata that generally get ignored in the economic world, it's a great feeling. So thank you both for being with us today. And we'll be sure to have program information available if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about this. And you can call your own financial advisor, and they can certainly, hopefully, access the programs as well. So thanks, guys, for being with us today. I think we'll leave it there. We are very fortunate to have had you on today.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure to be on. Appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for being with us on today's Market Explained. We'll be back again with a market commentary about all the crazy things that are going on in the market. And there are some crazy things, of course, and interest rates are going high. They seem to be going higher, and all those other issues we'll deal with. But we wanted to make sure we got a chance to meet these folks today. Over and out for 4-Star. Thanks, everybody. And we'll be back with that next episode very shortly. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian.